Peter de Kale R. was born in one of Amsterdam's roughest neighborhoods, an area where police sirens were louder than children's laughter. He grew up in a small apartment that always smelled of cigarettes and cheap alcohol. His father worked odd jobs and disappeared for days, and his mother was too overwhelmed to control her angry, restless son. Peter saw fights almost daily, men punching each other in the street, women screaming at debt collectors, and addicts arguing with dealers. The young boy absorbed all of it, learning early that the world didn't reward kindness. He learned to keep a straight face even when he was scared. The neighborhood taught him one lesson: the strongest man makes the rules. Even as a child, Peter spoke very little. Teachers complained that he hardly answered questions, but they also admitted he had a strange confidence for his age. When other boys were bullied, Peter didn't intervene, but he watched. He studied people, their reactions, their fears. He learned how fear worked long before he learned how to write a proper sentence. At home, he never shouted, but when he got angry, he broke things: plates, chairs, sometimes doors. His silence was more frightening than loud children's tantrums. Adults said he had the eyes of someone much older, eyes that didn't trust anyone. By age 12, Peter had already drawn the attention of small street groups who controlled corners and alleys around the neighborhood. They noticed how fearless he seemed, how he didn't back away when older boys threatened him. One gang leader, a teenager named Black Rob, invited him to hang around during late evening gatherings. Peter didn't speak much, but he watched everything: drug exchanges, stolen bikes being resold, and petty extortion. The older boys found his silence useful. They used him as a lookout because they knew he wouldn't panic. Peter never said no. Gangs became his education. Peter's transformation came at 13. During a small argument over stolen cigarettes, an older boy grabbed him and tried to humiliate him in front of others. Peter didn't hesitate. He smashed a glass bottle on the boy's face. Everyone froze. Peter stood still, breathing slowly, staring down at the bleeding boy as if nothing extraordinary had happened. That night, his reputation was born. The older gang members whispered, "This kid has no fear at all." That single act opened doors. Suddenly people respected him. Some were scared of him, and Peter loved it. Peter quickly became useful to the local gangs. He carried packages, delivered threats, watched over drug drops, and handled small debts. Adults couldn't believe he was only 13. He behaved like a grown criminal, calm, cold, and disciplined. He didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't brag. He just worked. For the gang leaders, he was perfect. For Peter, this was only the beginning. He realized something powerful. He didn't need muscles or size. His secret weapon was his willingness to do things others hesitated to do. By 15, Peter began losing hair unusually fast, earning him the nickname de Kale, meaning the bald one. Instead of feeling embarrassed, Peter embraced it. The name made him recognizable, almost iconic among street criminals. People said he looked older than he was, especially when he stared with those cold eyes. Being bald so young made him stand out. But in a world of violence and survival, standing out wasn't a curse for Peter. It was an advantage. Everyone in the underworld started knowing de Kale, the quiet boy who never backed down. When Peter turned 16, he became the unofficial muscle for mid-level drug dealers. They loved him because he had two rare qualities. He didn't talk much, and he didn't fail. Whether it was recovering unpaid debts or scaring someone who owed money, Peter delivered results. People said he was like a shadow, silent, always watching, and suddenly violent when needed. He learned how to read faces, how to intimidate without touching anyone, and how to use silence as a weapon. By now, dealers trusted him more than grown men. The warehouse robbery was Peter's first step into real crime. Not street fights, not petty theft, but a serious operation involving organized criminals who didn't tolerate mistakes. The target was a storage facility filled with imported electronics worth tens of thousands of euros. Peter wasn't supposed to lead anything. His job was simple: Stay outside, watch the road, and signal if police approached. But things went wrong when a night guard spotted them. The criminals panicked. Before anyone could react, Peter rushed inside, grabbed the guard from behind, and silenced him with a chokehold until he passed out. The older criminals stared at him in disbelief. They expected the boy to run. Instead, he saved them. That night, they took everything from the warehouse. But more importantly, they took notice of Peter Kale. They realized he was more than muscle. He was fearless, fast-thinking, and loyal. That robbery changed his life forever. After the warehouse job, older underworld figures began offering Peter guidance. These were not street thugs. They were seasoned criminals with connections to Amsterdam's deeper networks. They taught him how to avoid police detection, how to negotiate deals, how to enforce debts without leaving evidence. Peter absorbed everything like a sponge. He didn't ask questions. He listened. He learned about secret meeting spots, the importance of burner phones, and how to hide in plain sight. His mentors loved his discipline. He was becoming something dangerous, a young man with no fear and too much knowledge. Amsterdam's nightlife was booming in the early years Peter entered the scene. Clubs, bars, gambling rooms, and underground restaurants that operated past midnight. All needed protection. All were vulnerable to men like Peter. He began working for an extortion crew that collected protection fees from business owners. Some paid willingly. Others needed persuasion. Peter was excellent at persuasion. He didn't shout or wave weapons. He simply stepped close enough for the owner to feel his presence. His cold stare and calm voice did the rest. When violence was necessary, he acted quickly and efficiently. He never dragged things out. Business owners soon learned that paying Peter was easier than resisting him. Peter's true breakthrough came one rainy evening outside a nightclub. A stubborn bar owner refused to pay protection money and challenged the crew, saying he'd call the police. One of the extortion leaders pulled out a knife, but before anything happened, the owner swung a metal bar and hit him. The crew froze. The situation spiraled. Then Peter stepped forward. Without hesitation, he grabbed the bar, broke it out of the owner's hands, and hit him once. Only once. The man collapsed. He wasn't killed, but he was broken. The bar began paying the next day. People whispered about the bald young man who didn't blink when things got violent. From that night on, Kale was no longer just another enforcer. He became feared. Different criminal crews across Amsterdam began requesting Peter. His service was in demand because he offered something rare, results without drama. He didn't drink during jobs, didn't brag, didn't bring unnecessary attention. If someone had to be frightened, Peter frightened him. If someone had to be punished, Peter punished him. If someone had to disappear for a while, Peter handled it quietly. Crime bosses appreciated his reliability. Soon, he became the go-to enforcer for several groups. Despite his growing status, he remained quiet, almost invisible. But everyone knew his name. Peter wasn't violent because he enjoyed pain. He was violent because he believed violence was the only language the underworld respected. His childhood taught him that power was survival. He built a philosophy: strike first, strike fast, strike without emotion. He avoided unnecessary cruelty. It was not efficient. He used force only when needed, but when he used it, it was decisive. His cold and calculated brutality made him unpredictable. A man who enjoys violence can be manipulated. A man who uses violence as a tool is far more dangerous. Peter's discipline caught the attention of bigger players, men connected to international trafficking, money laundering networks, and illegal gambling chains. They invited him to private meetings in restaurants, warehouses, and back rooms of bars. They liked his silence. They liked his obedience. Slowly, he became trusted enough to carry sensitive messages, handle high-value debtors, and enforce agreements between criminals. These inner circles knew one thing: if Peter Kale knocked on your door, you had already made a mistake. His status skyrocketed after a high-profile enforcement job. A wealthy businessman who financed illegal gambling refused to pay his share to a dangerous crew. Other enforcers tried to negotiate and failed. Some were even chased away. So the crew sent Peter. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He simply walked into the businessman's office, locked the door, and 5 minutes later walked out. No one knows what happened inside. But the businessman paid everything the same day and even apologized to the crew. That incident gave Peter a mythical aura. Criminals began saying, "He doesn't need weapons. Kale just looks at you and you understand." Peter slowly discovered that people responded more to fear than to friendliness. One night, he confronted a bar owner who owed money to a local boss. The man trembled the moment Peter walked in, even before he uttered a single word. That was when Peter understood something powerful. His presence alone could control a room. He didn't need to shout. He didn't need to pull a weapon. The silence, the tension, and his calm voice were enough to bend people. This realization shaped the rest of his criminal career. Peter once approached a shop owner who kept delaying payment. He didn't break the man's arm or smash the shop window. Instead, he simply stood inches from him, speaking in a slow, emotionless tone about what accidents happen in Amsterdam to people who delay too much. By the time Peter left, the shop owner had already transferred the money. No violence, just fear. Peter felt like he had unlocked a new level of power. Word spread quickly that Kale didn't shout, didn't brag, and didn't behave like typical street thugs. He was quiet, and that made him even more frightening. Criminals, club owners, cafe managers, even illegal gamblers knew that when Peter entered their building, he wasn't there to negotiate. He was there to collect. His cold, calm delivery made people pay before he even asked how much they owed. His reputation grew in whispers, never in public statements. Peter studied people's eyes, tone, and body language. When someone lied, he spotted it immediately. When someone planned to resist, he sensed it before they moved. Skill made him extremely valuable to the crime bosses of Amsterdam. They didn't need a man who merely threatened people. They needed someone who could identify weakness instantly and exploit it. Peter became that man. One evening, a wealthy nightclub owner tried to cheat a major crime organization, claiming he had no profit to pay them. Peter was sent to solve the situation. Instead of smashing the place, Peter calmly went through the nightclub's accounts, found hidden income streams, exposed the lie, and walked out with triple the expected payment. The bosses were amazed. They realized Peter wasn't just muscle. He was strategic muscle. From that day, he was never treated like a low-level enforcer again. Despite living in a world filled with crime, Peter avoided drugs and kept alcohol to a minimum. He understood that the moment a man loses control of his mind, he becomes vulnerable. And vulnerability was something he could not afford. His discipline separated him from most criminals. He stayed sharp, alert, and ready at all times. This clean mindset made him even more dangerous, because he was always calculating. Peter developed a mental map of who owed what, who delayed, who lied, and who tried to escape. He never wrote anything down. He didn't need to. His memory was terrifyingly sharp. People realized they couldn't hide from him, even if they tried to disappear for years. Eventually, Peter would show up, calm as ever, expecting his money. A gambler once fled Amsterdam to avoid payment, thinking Peter would ignore such a small debt. What he didn't know was that Peter took every debt personally. Peter tracked him across highways, through villages, and finally cornered him in Rotterdam. He didn't beat him. He simply made him kneel and apologize. The psychological humiliation was worse than any physical punishment. From that moment, the story spread. No one escapes Kale. Peter walked among men who were involved in drug trafficking, arms deals, and violent crimes. Many of them feared no one, except him. They respected him because he understood power dynamics. He respected them back, but he also made sure none of them disrespected him. Peter carried himself in a way that made even killers step aside when he passed. Rival gangs in Amsterdam knew Peter wasn't a leader, wasn't a boss, but was still a major threat. When they heard he was involved in a conflict, they didn't bother arguing. They either backed down or prepared for serious trouble. His lightweight frame and bald head made him look simple, but his influence was heavy. Two criminal groups were about to clash outside a cafe. Shouts escalated. Weapons appeared. Then Peter walked into the scene. He didn't speak. He simply stood between them with his hands in his pockets, staring silently. Slowly, the shouting stopped. One group stepped back, then the other. Somehow, one man's calmness dissolved chaos. That day, Peter earned a new nickname: the Wall. Peter once collected debts from a man whose wife started crying uncontrollably. The woman explained that her husband's debt wasn't from gambling, but from trying to pay for their child's medical care. Peter was struck by something he hadn't felt in years: empathy. He left without taking a cent, and later returned with money to help them. He never explained why. He simply told the man, "Take care of your child." That moment revealed a rare softness hidden deep within him. Peter once confronted an enforcer from Rotterdam who shared his same calm, cold style. The two men stood for minutes in silence, sizing each other up. No punches, no shouting. Eventually, the Rotterdam enforcer stepped aside. He later admitted that Peter's eyes looked like those of someone who had nothing left to fear, and that scared him. Peter didn't enjoy violence. It wasn't excitement for him. It was a tool, something to be used only when absolutely necessary. This made him even more strategic, because when he finally decided to hit someone, it carried weight and meaning. His controlled brutality shook people more than mindless aggression ever could. Strangely, some businessmen liked having Peter around. He guaranteed stability. When he collected money, he expected fairness. If he protected someone, he did it completely. His reliability created a strange form of trust. Fear-based trust, but trust nonetheless. In Amsterdam's underworld, that was rare. He operated by 3 rules: no lies to partners, no theft from friends, no disrespect to the street code. These rules formed the skeleton of his life. Anyone who crossed them was dead to him, even if they kept breathing. His walk looked simple, but carried a frightening weight. He moved like he'd already solved the situation before stepping into it. That slow confidence shredded nerves faster than threats ever could. Bosses trusted him because he kept his head when everyone else let adrenaline do the thinking. He listened, filtered lies, and forced solutions that stuck. In a world defined by chaos, he was the stability no one expected. A debtor tried hiding in a hospital bed, pretending to be too weak to face him. Peter walked in, quiet as winter. He said, "If you can breathe, you can pay." The man settled the debt before Peter even reached the door. A businessman slid a thick envelope across a table. Peter pushed it right back. Money couldn't buy his code. That refusal made his name spread faster than violence ever did. A young enforcer tried to scare nightclub owners by saying he was the new Kale. One face-to-face with the real man dissolved his entire bravado. Peter didn't raise a finger. The silence was enough. A gangster shoved an old woman on a crowded sidewalk. Peter grabbed him so sharply the whole street froze. That flash of fury reminded everyone he wasn't gentle by nature. He was controlled by choice. He spotted a group of thugs cornering a teenager near a metro station. He stepped in, and the whole pack scattered. The boy braced for demands. Peter simply nodded and walked away. Every morning he sat at the same cafe. The owner never asked questions, and Peter never overshared. Their quiet bond became one of the safest places in his life. Rumors painted him mythic. 5 men at once, unbreakable bones, unshakable nerves. He didn't confirm or deny anything. Rumors worked better when left to grow wild. Police cornered him during a sweep. Instead of running, he handed them his ID and stood still. That composure unnerved them more than resistance ever could. A restaurant owner begged for mercy. Peter listened, calculated, and created a plan that let the man survive and still repay. People learned he was unpredictable, sometimes a storm, sometimes a strategist. He told younger men that fists were tools, but minds were weapons. Some absorbed that wisdom. The rest vanished into the city's noise. 3 men waited in the dark with weapons. He saw them, didn't flinch, and walked straight toward them. Their nerve broke first. His fearlessness reshaped the night. 2 families were ready for blood. He made them sit in an empty warehouse and talk. His presence alone forced honesty. By sunrise, the war had dissolved. He drew a hard line. No threats to women, no harm to children. Anyone violating that line became untouchable to him, in the worst way. He saw a rival cornered by masked attackers. Peter stepped in without hesitation. He didn't do it for loyalty. He did it because death by ambush felt dishonorable. He fed strays and talked to them under his breath. That tiny softness lived deep under layers of armor. He mastered silence, slow breathing, and long eye contact. People folded under the weight of his calm. He weaponized psychology long before criminals understood the word. He rarely raised his voice or his hands. His restraint terrified people more than rage ever could. Power through composure became his signature. During a tense negotiation, a man pulled a knife. Peter spoke in a level tone, peeling panic off the room until the blade dropped. Chaos dissolved under his voice. Touching him meant declaring war on someone who couldn't be rattled, rushed, or tricked. No one wanted to provoke a calm man who knew how to dismantle entire networks. A young gambler owed too much. Peter didn't break him. He redirected him. Years later, that same gambler told people he owed his life to the bald man who didn't give up on me. He once loved deeply. She left because the street always came first. That loss built a cold wall inside him, a wall no one ever climbed again. A partner slipped poison into his drink. Peter tasted bitterness and set the glass down slowly. He didn't kill the man. He erased him, socially, financially, reputationally. It was a fate colder than death. One major figure used Peter as a human stabilizer. Delicate missions, volatile negotiations. Peter handled them all. Reliability became his currency. By his mid-40s, the weight of his choices settled on him. His reputation had grown too large to escape. Normal life stood behind a locked door he no longer had the key for. He didn't move as fast, but he thought sharper than ever. Younger men idolized him. Older ones depended on him. Wisdom replaced muscle. He carved his name into Amsterdam's criminal history, not through blood, but through control, discipline, and psychological authority. His legend spread person to person like a quiet rumor with sharp teeth. He vanished from the streets, but his stories didn't. New criminals still whisper his name when they need courage, or when they need to remember what real danger looks like.